Hey guys, Brooklyn Bound here, the Raid Master, with a full guide to the Garden of Salvation raid. The Garden of Salvation raid has 4 encounters, and in this video I'm going to break down each encounter, the roles, and the setups that have the most success. Keep in mind that the strategy and weapons can change as new content drops, but for the most part, this guide will give you all the information you need to understand how to complete each encounter. Also want to provide a shout out to Clean_Killer for providing the video content for this guide. You can follow him on Twitch, and you see the link here. So let's go ahead and get started. The first encounter is Escape the Consecrated Mind. Titans should be using Bottom Tree Striker, or hammers, or really whatever they use for ad clearing is best. Hunters the same. Tether or Arc Strider using Raid Influx is great. And Warlock, I preferred Bottom Tree Dawnblade, but whatever super you want to use to clear ads. Well of Radiance really isn't necessary here unless you have some fairly low power Guardians, because you're going to be clearing ads and not really doing much boss damage. Overall, super choice really isn't too big of a deal in this encounter. For weapons, you want to have a good sniper rifle. I recommend Izanagi or Tranquility or something in the primary slot, but it's not necessary. For ads, Recluse, auto rifles, or really whatever you'd like, and heavy is also very open. Since there's no boss DPS here, you want weapons that are going to clear ads, as the main challenging enemies that are in this encounter are going to be void-shielded Minotaurs and Cyclops that are pretty far away. There also could be champion Minotaurs with overshield that you can use the overpowered rounds from your artifact. However, at 940 power or higher, it really isn't necessary. This encounter introduces a mechanic that will literally repeat throughout the entire raid. It's good that you learn the mechanics of it now and go ahead and get used to it. This is the tether mechanic. The tether mechanic works by shooting these relay boxes that are found out through the entire raid. When shot once, it'll activate the tether box and it'll start glowing white, and the person closest to the box will generate a tether chain from the box to them. There is a cutoff distance, so if you aren't getting the tether to form, try getting a little closer. Note that if the tether chain between you and the box or another player is orange, it means that you're at the distance capacity of the tether, and if you move any further away, it will likely break. You use the tether in this raid to create a human chain from the box to any objective. In addition, you cannot shoot while tethered, so keep this in mind when choosing to use it, because if there are enemies nearby, you will be unable to defend yourself. Finally, line of sight is a big issue with the tether chain. If you lose line of sight, the person chained to you, or the person loses line of sight of the box, the tether will also break. In the first encounter, you really only need 3 people to do any tether chain, but more doesn't necessarily hurt if you have an extra player available. In this encounter, you're going to be tethering from the boxes to a key on the Vex doorways that are blocking the areas off. Once the tether chain has reached the keyhole on the door will open and will allow you to advance in the encounter. You need to do this multiple times in multiple rooms to complete it. So, start by splitting your team up into 2 groups of 3. Class makeup really isn't important, and super choice is also not that important. One team will start off as the boss team, and one team will start off as what we'll call the door team. To start the encounter, tether from the box and create a chain to open the first door on the right-hand side. Once opened, the boss will activate in the first room and the encounter starts. At this point, the door team will advance into the area that was just unlocked and begin clearing ads, while the boss team stays behind collecting the voltaic overflow that the boss drops to avoid wiping the team. Also note that the responsibilities of being on door team or boss team will actually swap back and forth, so don't necessarily get too comfortable in your role because you may need to adapt to a different one as the encounter progresses. So, I'll break down each team individually as what they need to do. First, the door team. The door team will be moving forward and clearing all the ads in the newly opened room. Look for hobgoblins hiding up high, cyclops, and minotaurs. Once all of the ads in the newly opened room are dead, a Vex Hydra called an Angelic will spawn in front of the new locked door. These Angelics, when alive, disallow the use of the tether boxes, so they must be killed in order to create a tether. Once the Angelic is dead, the tether box will become available for use again, and you now need to locate it and create a tether chain from that box to the lock on the locked door. Once the door is opened, the next part will start. Meanwhile, while the door team is doing everything I just mentioned, the boss team who stayed behind is busy killing ads, cyclops, and making sure the boss doesn't wipe the team with his voltaic overflow that he drops. Every 30 seconds or so, the boss will charge up the overflow and shoot it onto the ground. If someone runs through it, they will collect it and start a 2-minute and 30-second timer. If nobody grabs it, it's a wipe. You can only hold one voltaic overflow buff. If you grab a second, you'll die. However, sometimes grabbing a second one and sacrificing yourself isn't a bad option if it avoids wiping the whole encounter, so keep that in mind. Also, if you die at any point and you have the overflow, you will lose it, which might not be such a bad thing because it allows you to grab another one if you need to. In addition, once the timer on the overflow runs out, nothing happens, it just allows you to pick up another one. So while the door team is pushing forward and working on opening the next door, the boss team is one by one collecting the overflow buffs to keep the boss from wiping the raid. Now, once the door team opens the second door, the boss in the first room will despawn, and he will teleport into the next room. At this point, the team responsibilities swap. The door team that originally pushed forward now will stay behind, because they have no overflow buffs and they can start collecting them. And the team who is collecting the overflow buffs in the boss room will push forward into the newly opened area to act as the new door team. They will kill the ads, the cyclops, the angelic, and open the next door, and so on. Ultimately, you're going to keep repeating this process until you finish the encounter. This encounter is all about communicating when you have an overflow or not, and who is staying to defend, and who will be pushing forward to unlock the doors. Finally, a few other notes. The last door you arrive at will have 3 locks on it, instead of just 1. They all have to be undone to progress. However, after unlocking the first lock on the door, the boss will despawn for the boss team. This allows the rest of the people to help with the final 2 locks. Finally, once that final door with the 3 locks is open, you will progress into a big area with a ton of cyclops. The boss will drop 3 more overflows in this area about every 100 meters, so you're going to need 3 more people to grab them. If you aren't grabbing an overflow in this final stage, use your supers, snipers, and heavy or whatever you can to destroy all the cyclops and minotaurs. After you've collected the final 3 overflows, you've finished the encounter and can move on. The second encounter in the Garden of Salvation is the Draw Out the Consecrated Mind. Class choice, super, and weapon choice is going to be very similar to the first encounter, as you will spend most of the time clearing ads and surviving. There's no boss here to DPS, so you're mainly going to be killing minotaurs and vex hydras called angelics. You also want to make sure you have anti-barrier rounds on one of your weapons, as there are anti-barrier hobgoblins that will create major problems for you if you can't break their shields. Overall, this area is a giant gauntlet. It has long hallways that interconnect. You can see the map on screen for a very detailed and professionally rendered drawing of what it looks like. In this encounter, you'll need to defend the relays from the ad sacrificing, similar to a Vex public event or the Vault of Glass. There are 4 main relays at each corner of the area, and then 1 in the middle that is blocked off by Vex walls. We'll get to that later in the encounter when the walls open. Each relay also has a tether box in the hallway adjacent to it, which will be used to create a tether chain from the box to the tower. Doing this tether correctly will give anyone in the chain the Enlightened buff, which is required to damage any of the white shielded enemies. This buff lasts for 45 seconds and can be reapplied anytime you connect a tether from the box to the relay. The shielded enemies can have their white shields removed by anyone with an Enlightened buff, but once the shield is gone, it will not regenerate. A good strategy if you're getting low on timer is to shoot the shielded enemies approaching you once to remove their shields, then go back and kill them as normal. Also note that there is no limit on the number of people or the number of times you can use the tether. You can retether or rebuff with as little as 2 people. To start the encounter, split your team into 3 pairs of 2. Team 1 will stay at the spawn area to start the encounter. Team 2 will go down the left hallway, and Team 3 will go down the right hallway. Each team will need to kill the ads on the way, including the anti-barrier hobgoblins, and then the angelic that spawns at the relay. Once the angelic is killed at the relay, it will unlock the box and allow the pair to create a tether and get the enlightened buff. Doing this also activates the relay and the portals on the sides. These portals, once activated, create a very fast way for any player to travel to and from each of the four corners of the map. This is going to be very important later on. At this point, 3 relays will be active: the one at the start, the one down the left, and the one down the right hallways. Now this is when it gets a little tricky, because you ultimately need to have one person defending each relay from the ads. So, the left team and the right team each will leave one person behind to defend the relays, while the other person from the team will push on to the final relay. They will meet each other there, kill the angelic, and tether to the relay to activate it. Now, all 4 relays on the corners and all portals will be active. Now it just becomes a game of defend the towers. You need to keep one person at each of the 4 relays, and then 2 people will float. One person will float between the first relay where you started and the one down the left hallway, which we'll call relay number 2, and one person will float from relay number 3, which is the one you actually activated last, and relay number 4. The floater's job is to retether with the person that's defending to rebuff them with the enlightenment, and to also help kill any ads that could be sacrificing. They use the portals to go back and forth between the two they are covering to keep rebuffing and keep helping. After a few waves of ads, 3 angelics will spawn and attack one of the 4 relays. The defender at that relay, we need to call it out quickly, and the floaters will teleport to that relay to help them kill them all. This repeats a few times until ultimately the walls blocking the middle area will open up. At this point, the 4 relays that you've been defending will go inactive, and everybody needs to sprint to the 5th and final relay in the center. Now, all 6 people defend this one relay, killing ads, rebuffing with the tether box in the middle, and killing angelics. This repeats until the encounter completes. The third encounter, we finally get to destroy the consecrated mine that we've been hunting for the last 2. In this phase, we finally get to do some boss damage, so super selection becomes much more important. Hunters 100% want to run tether here. It will be used on the boss to buff damage and also stun him to increase DPS time. However, if you have a few extra hunters, having a few with Celestial Nighthawk on Golden Gun is not a bad idea. Titans, you want at least 1 Weapons of Light bubble for the buff. Warlocks, Lunafaction boots with Well may help your sniper reloads. Chaos Reach and Nova Bomb are also good for DPS. Weapon selection, it's important that you have a sniper rifle. Either Izanagi or Whisper are great, but another sniper with firing line probably wouldn't be bad either. The boss is going to be moving away from you while you're damaging him, so you want something ranged to hit him. For heavy, I recommend the grenade launcher to help kill Minotaurs, Wendigo if you can collect orbs, and these can be great for burst DPS on the boss when the DPS phase starts. Once again, you're going to want to split your team up into 2 groups of 3. Class selection really isn't too important here. Team 1 will be the boss team, and Team 2 will be the Gambit team. Yeah, I said Gambit. Ugh, I hate Gambit. Anyway, I'll cover what each team does here separately. This encounter revisits the voltaic overflow mechanic that we learned in the first encounter, the little twist. The boss team will be following the boss around throughout the entire encounter as he makes his way into the different alcoves. When he gets to each one, he will drop an overflow on the ground, and one guardian will need to grab it. Doing so will detain them. The other 2 people on the boss team should flank the boss, one on the left side and one on the right. All 3 people will face the boss as he charges up his eyes. At this point, the detained person is going to look at the boss's upper flap, I guess that's what it's called, wing, whatever, for 2 circular lighted areas. We'll call them inner and outer. The inner will be closest to the middle, and the outer is obviously outer. The detained person will see one of those 2 areas lit up in red. They quickly need to call inner or outer to the other 2 people and shoot it. The other two people will shoot the same oriented light on the left and right flaps. All three lights have to be shot within about 3 seconds or the detained person dies. Using an auto rifle or SMG or high-impact hand cannon is great. Also note that if anyone shoots the wrong eye or light or whatever it is, the person detained will die. This continues as the boss team keeps following him around as he drops overflows in the different alcoves, and the person grabbing the middle detained one each time will change because obviously you can't grab two. Communication is key here because each time this happens, you're always going to have one person grabbing the overflow, one person getting the left, and one person getting the right. The Gambit team will be doing something completely different while this is going on. They will be defending a single activated relay on the outside of the map. You can tell which one is active because it will have a bright white light emanating from it up towards the sky. The Gambit team will be killing the Minotaurs that randomly spawn in the hallways and make their way into the center area. When they're killed, they drop 5 motes. You can hold a maximum of 10 motes, and if you die, you lose them. You can also only hold them for about 45 seconds. These motes need to be banked at the active relay. Banking the motes gives you the Enlighten buff, which will, you guessed it, allow you to destroy the white-shielded enemies attacking the conflux. Remember, the enlightenment only lasts for about 45 seconds, so the Gambit team will need to keep rotating people to deposit motes and defend, while the others head back and go collect more. Do not let any ads sacrifice on the relay, because if they do, they will steal banked motes and ultimately probably lead to a wipe. You need 30 motes to fill the relay and start the DPS phase. In addition, watch out for supplicants in the hallways. They spawn and move their way into the center area, and they can wreak havoc on your team if you aren't paying attention. These are the exploder harpies that seem to chase you around when you're already an inch from death. Before the DPS, there's one more note. Because collecting the motes kind of takes a while, there will likely need to be a swap out of one person on the boss team to one person on the Gambit team. This is because you get to a point where all 3 boss team players have collected an overflow buff, but the Gambit team hasn't fully banked 30 motes yet. Therefore, the person who last left the relay to go collect more should actually move to the boss team, temporarily at least, and one person on the boss team should go back and help with the motes. The best collection and deposit strategy I've found is to do 5, 10, 10, 5, meaning the first person gets 5 motes, goes and banks them, then the next person waits to collect 10 before they go deposit, and then the next person gets 10, and then the final person gets 5. You have to be quick because the person at the bank defending the conflux only gets enlightenment for 45 seconds. Once their enlightenment wears off, they'll be unable to de-shield the enemies and destroy them. Finally, once all 30 motes are in, the mind will get summoned to the relay you've been defending. All 6 players need to head to the active relay very quickly. Once there, the mind will light up, about 20 to 30 of its red lights or eyes or whatever they're called, and you have to shoot all of them. At this time, you want to drop your weapons of light bubble or your well of radiance. Get your snipers reloaded and get ready to do damage. Once all of the eyes have been destroyed, the boss's center will open up and you can finally damage it. However, it's a little different because as you're damaging him, he will quickly move away from you down the hallway back towards the center. So you have to kind of follow him down the hall while you're shooting. You can't stay back because a wall will get put up and you can't shoot through it, and you also can't get too close either. Hunters should jump up and shoot a tether on the wall of the hallway behind the boss so that as he backs up, it catches him and stuns him briefly, and it can extend your DPS for a short time. Keep shooting him as much as you can until he goes immune. Then you'll simply just keep repeating everything you just did again until the boss is finally dead. Everybody that was on the Gambit team can go back to doing Gambit team, and everybody on the boss team can go back to what they were doing originally on the boss team. The final encounter in Garden of Salvation is the Sanctified Mind. A giant Megatron-looking Vex with a giant void cannon that doesn't ever seem to run out of ammo. Team makeup and super selection is key here, as the final encounter and all the mechanics you've learned so far in the previous 3 will all come together in one fight. Titans want to have Bubble with Helm of Saint 14 for boss damage, but you really only need 1, and Warlocks Well of Radiance with Phoenix Protocol. Hunters want Tether, unless you have a surplus of Hunters, and then you can have a few run Celestial Nighthawk for boss damage. Weapon choice is also very important. Boss damage is best with sniper rifles, so either use Izanagi if you have the Catalyst, or Whisper of the Worm. Only run Izanagi here if you're skilled enough to quickly reload into one honed edge shot, otherwise I recommend Whisper at the time this video was made. Recluse is a solid secondary option for ad clearing, and another sniper in your primary, or maybe a heavy machine gun if you're using Izanagi for clearing ads. You will have multiple assignments for this encounter. First, you need to designate 2 pairs of people to be on Gambit teams, Gambit Team 1 and Gambit Team 2. You'll also want to pre-assign a group of 3 or 4 people to do the tether mechanic, as that is what's needed to stun the boss and allow you to damage him. There are multiple different strategies in this fight that can be used, and in this video I'll cover the one we've had the most success with. When the encounter starts, the boss will begin shooting you and roaming around the front area where he spawns. Waves of goblins will start spawning at his feet, along with an angelic. There are 2 relay towers in this encounter that must be protected, one on the left, which we'll call blue, and one on the right, which we'll call orange. The waves of goblins will spawn under the boss, and then make their way to the relays and try to sacrifice. Job number 1 in this whole fight is to prevent that from happening at all costs. Too many sacrifices will wipe the raid. The easiest way to keep up with ads is literally to set up a Well of Radiance on the stationary block right in front of the boss. Keep rotating wells between warlocks and use this as your main spot of operation. This strategy only works if you have multiple warlocks with Phoenix Protocol. If you are light on warlocks, you can set up closer to the relays and designate teams to protect left and right separately. Once the first wave of ads and the angelic are dead, the boss's weak points, which are displayed on his shoulder and his knee, will activate, and the main objective of collecting motes will begin. Every time a weak point on the boss is shot, 4 different things will happen that you need to be aware of. 1. It will open up a portal that will teleport anyone who jumps through it to an island away from the main battleground with enemies holding motes. 2. A Cyclops will spawn on the left if the knee is shot, and the right if the shoulder is shot. 3. The boss will remove a section of the ground environment, exposing more Vex milk. And 4. It'll bring back anyone currently on the island of that side that is shot. I will note that you can rebuild the removed sections of floor by tethering to either relay box to a little key on the ground. You need at least 2 people and 3 for some of them. However, keep in mind this is very difficult to keep up with, and I only recommend worrying about rebuilding if you don't have a lot of warlocks, or if he takes away the main platforms in front of him and between the relays. So, to start, shoot the knee and open the blue portal on the left. At this time, Gambit Team 1 will jump through the portal and kill all the enemies on the islands. Make sure to pick up all the motes. You want at least 15 motes total between the 2 of you. The others at the main battleground will need to kill the Cyclops that spawned on the left-hand side. Once Gambit Team 1 is full of motes, they need to call out to pull them back, and the team in the main battleground will shoot the knee again, which brings back Gambit Team 1. At the same time, Gambit Team 2 will jump through the newly created portal and repeat what Gambit Team 1 just did. Kill the Cyclops, and then pull them back when they are full as well. When the Gambit teams return to the main area, they need to deposit their motes in their respective relay, blue or orange. Doing so will charge the relay and give them the Enlightened buff, which, you guessed it, allows them to strip the white-shielded enemies of their shields so they can be destroyed. It is the responsibility of these players to keep all the shielded enemies away from both relays until the next Gambit team comes back with their motes. Once both teams have deposited their motes in the left relay, it should be full and will beam with energy or something like that. It needs 30 motes to fill up. Now you switch sides and repeat the exact same thing by shooting the shoulder instead and going through the orange portal on the right. Once both relays are filled with 30 motes each, it will allow the final DPS phase to happen properly. If the boss triggers the DPS mechanic before you get 60 motes total, you will likely wipe, so you can't take forever on filling the relays. The start of the DPS phase is signified when the boss spawns a large plus-shaped symbol in front of him that will be either blue or orange. In addition, an angelic will spawn, which locks the tether boxes above the relays. Kill the angelic, and then 2 waves of adds before starting the DPS phase. Now comes the tether mechanic. The tether mechanic is likely the most difficult part for newer players to learn. It's a little finicky and requires some patience to pull off. The color of the plus symbol in front of the boss is the side that the tether needs to come from. So, if the plus symbol is orange in front of the boss, you need to create a tether chain from the orange tether box to the plus symbol in front of the boss. Doing so correctly will stun him and allow you to damage him. Drop wells of radiance, weapons of light, and go ham on his crit spot, especially when he raises in the air. Additionally, you can extend the DPS phase by about 7 seconds by doing a second tether on the opposite side of the first one. So, if you use the orange tether box to tether him to start the DPS phase, then the second tether has to come from the blue side. However, this is very tricky to pull off due to timing. If you don't get the second tether off in time, it won't work, and anyone trying to get it to work will miss out on damage. You'll likely also have barely touched his health bar, so it's up to you and your team to decide how to handle the damage phase. Also note that doing the tether requires at least 3 people. However, sometimes having a 4th is extremely helpful. Continue shooting the boss in his crit spot until he lowers back to the ground and the DPS phase is over. After DPS is over, you will have about 25 seconds to clear any remaining adds, pick up ammo, grab orbs, and rebuild any floor pieces you wish before the entire thing repeats all over again. Depending on your buffs, mods, and accuracy of your shots, you should be able to take the boss down in about 2 to 3 phases. You get a total of 4 phases before he enrages and wipes the raid. After he's dead, drop down the hole, collect your chests, and thank your Sherpa. You've just finished the Garden of Salvation.